going to use fine liner pens, and I'd recommend 3 sizes. So these are the ones I have here, and 3 sizes really works best. So you have the middle pen to use for your outlines, a thicker pen to add in the blocks of shading, and a finer pen to help blend it all together, which will make more sense as we go. But grab 3 fine liner pens in 3 different sizes. But if you don't have fine liner pens, this will work with any pen at all. So 10 steps to draw a rose. I'm going to break it down step by step, so let's get straight into it. So grab your middle pen to draw the outline, and step 1 is going to be the innermost of the flower, and I'm going to start directly in the centre so that there's enough room the whole way around for the rest of the flower to flow from that point. And the very first step within step 1 is to draw a little bump like so, that kind of flows to the edge. And then behind that, we're going to draw another one that appears from just behind, like so, and then that connects to that bottom there. So that bottom line connects back up nicely, and you've got that little hidden petal behind there. Alright, now from this point, we're going to draw a curved line that'll close off the bottom of this shape. So start from about here and curve that all the way up to a little flick at the end. And if you've got a little bit of a gap there, just join it back up so these petals sit on that line there, like so. And from this point, we're going to curve the side up into a little bit of a lip. So draw that little curve first and bring that back down to this point here. So as you can see, it's going to start to round up the back here. And the last part of this step, we're going to draw a line that closes this part off. And I'm going to start that from this point here, so extend that up a little bit. And we don't want it to be too tall, so we're going to round it off and start to bring it straight back down to the bottom here, like so. So we've got a little flick on the end there. And that's step 1. Let's move straight on to step 2. And we're going to start by bringing up a little bit of a rounded edge from the back of here and drop that down into a straight line with a flick towards the bottom there. For any tapered lines, you just want to apply more pressure with your pen to start with, and then quickly move it, flick to the end, and you'll achieve that nice flick if you just lift the pressure off as you're moving the pen. Okay, so next step, we're going to go back to this side, and I'm going to draw a little bit of a bump to the left there, curve that back in like so, just a little short bit, and flick that at the end. Okay, now we just want to connect these two together, so I'm going to start a little bit to the left of where this one ended at the bottom, and I'm going to arch that up and straighten it up a bit to bring it to meet this side on the right, like so. So we've got this little bit extended down the bottom there. Alright, that was step 2. Let's move straight on to step 3. And the first part is to come from the back of here and round a line round to meet the bottom of this flick here. And we're just going to wiggle the pen to bring it down to a V here. And whenever I say wiggle the pen, just really be quite organic and natural with your movement. It doesn't have to follow that exact same line as what I have, because every flower is completely unique and are all different. So just wave your pen ever so slightly to create a natural organic line. Okay, from the top here, we're going to bring this into the center like so a little bit, and then round it back off, and then flick that down to the bottom there. So you've got this V shape here that we can close off, and then this part's a little bit extended from that area there. Okay, and last couple of lines on this step. I'm going to start from up the top here and round that up to a point here like so. Wave a line that's a little bit flatter, and then from that point curve that around and flick that off to the right like so. Just going to add a little bit of detail here with a line in here like so, just to add a bit of interest, and then another one like so here. Just be a little bit lighter with those lines to make them a little bit finer. And I'm going to add another little one here as well, just to start to add in little bits of detail as we're going through. Alright, now we're on to step 4 already, so getting through these very quick. Next we're going to add in a bit of a fold in this petal here, so I'm going to draw a line just above where this point sits, curve that around, and then flick it off a little bit into a little bit of a point at the edge of there, and then round that off back towards that line where we started. Wave the pen a little bit and then taper that as a flick towards the centre of the flower again. And I'm just going to add a little bit of a rounded line just sitting underneath that there, that'll kind of start into the next stage. I'm going to extend this line down a little bit like so, and again we can extend this bit a little bit after we've added in the next line, but first I'm going to go to the back here, and this is where we can start to be a lot more organic with our lines as well, to create these nice jagged petals. So now we've got the centre of the flower, we're going to start to add the main petals around now. So start your line off the side of here and angle that to the left a little bit, and then what you want to do is kind of arch this all the way up here, kind of dipping and flowing the pen as you're going around, and then bring that around the back here and close it off as you get to the edge there. And next we're going to add in a fold for the petal, like that kind of closes off the inner bulb of the flower here. So we're going to add a lip that's going to be one long line, so kind of get your hand a bit steady and flow the pen a little bit of a curve, and then flick that off like here, and just waving the pen as you go just to create that nice organic line. And this is where we can start to extend some of these lines down. So I'm going to add one in here just so it sits right to the bottom there, and I'm going to extend that as well just so it all meets at the bottom there. And I'm going to add in the front of this petal, so start by curving the line down there like so, and then create a little scallop, and then another little scallop, and then as you're waving the pen in the same direction, we kind of want to make the line thinner. So we've started off a bit thick here, and then as you're going along, kind of bring it closer and closer to that line above until it kind of blends in at the end there into that edge. Alright, so that was step 4. Step 5, we're going to start to add in some bigger petals. So I'm going to add one in here to kind of fill in this gap at the side. So I'm going to start it from up here, bring the pen up a bit like so, and then just really start to round off the petal towards the bottom direction, create a little bit of a dip there, bring it back up, and then wave the pen and then just smoothly curve it to meet this point here, so this part extends out a little bit, and that'll be the starting point for a petal that we'll draw in a second. But first we're going to do the same thing over here to fill in this gap. So I'm going to start from up here, angle the line towards the top of the page, create a little scallop dip like so, and then round it off a bit smoother to meet this line here from that lip down there. You can really see it's starting to take shape now. And we've got one last petal to draw in for step 5, and I'm going to start this from this point here that we already extended up. So bring the line up a bit to a little bit of a scallop, and then bump it back out, bring it back up towards the top of the page, and create a bit of height here. We need a bit of a distance between this part of the flower and this leaf, so this is a bigger petal, sorry. So really wave the line as you're creating an arch shape, and then start to round it back down, create a bigger dip here, bump it back up a bit, and then really start to round it off and smooth it a bit as we come round the side here. And this one we can just start to curve around the bottom and then flick towards the edge here, so we don't need to close that one off, we're leaving that one open for now. Alright, now we're moving on to step 6. So we've got a good few petals in this step, which are mostly going to sit down here and start to come around the sides. So first of all, I'm going to just create a bit of a rounded edge that's going to close this area off. So my taper kind of faded a bit too much there, so I'm going to bring that back down and then round it to sit up here. Then we're going to create another line from here that's a bit rounded like so, and make sure it doesn't sit directly under this line. We want to create separation and not look like that's the same petal with a line in it. Make sure it's to the right of that. And then in the center of here we're going to create another little lip. So round off a line like so, that's got a bit of a wave in it, and start it off a bit narrower from the top with another line that sits directly underneath it, and create a little bit of a bump to make it bigger, make it a bit bigger at the bottom there. Alright, now this is going to start the basis of our next petal, and we're going to bring this down a little bit like so, and then start to draw a line that sits underneath here that's got a bit of a bump in it, and then we can bring that down and around up the side here and flick that up towards the top of the flower. And from the point that we drew down here, we're going to add in a little line that comes from underneath here and just round that towards the bottom like so, nice curve, and then arch that in a little bit to create a little bit of a bump that starts to round back up. I'm going to create a few little scallops, little wavy lines here, as we're going to bring this all the way up around up here to sit back up there, so it's a bit of a big one. So get your steady hand ready as we curve the pen like so, creating little bumps that flick out as we go, and as you get towards the top, stop moving the pen so much and create a smoother rounded petal that's going to point at the top and then sit behind here. Alright, so a couple of steps left for this step. So from this point here, bring a line out like so, and another line up here that are a bit straighter, and then connect these together with wavy flowing lines like so, just to add a little bit of a petal in there. And then from underneath there, we're going to drop a line that sits in the center, well, kind of more towards the inner edge that we created here, but not in that point. Just round that up and then bring it back up like so, and this is going to connect this area back up to here. So we're going to round that up and then drop it back down, and then flick that at the end like so. And from the edge here, we're going to start off a bit thinner and draw another line underneath. So it's a bit thinner here, and then it curves up to follow this point, so it's a bit thinner there. And then as we get to this point, drop it back down, wave the pen a bit, bring it back up, and then connect it back to the edge there. So you've got a little bit of a gap in there. And roses are really complex with all of their layers of petals, which is why this one's a bit more complicated than some flowers, just because there's so many intertwining petals flowing in around each other. So we're just trying to create as much interest as possible by kind of overlapping areas and adding in these different levels of petals, I guess. Alright, now we're on to step 7. So again, some bigger petals. I'm going to start by adding one over here that's going to start up here, and I'm going to create a little bit of a straighter edge at first and then bring that down like so, up to a bump, and then curve that back down, again jagged edge with the pen, and then have that sit just behind the smaller one here. And we're going to create a little bit of a one that's like a little bit of a line, I guess, that's going to flow from this point here. So just extend that line with a little bit of a flick, angling towards the center, and that's going to be a good starting point for a petal that we're going to draw underneath here, which is a bit more of a flatter rounded one. So we're just going to round that line up and then sit it underneath that front lip of the petal that we drew over there. Okay, we can add in another one over here, and I'm going to start it from up here. Just wave that line around and then straighten it out a bit, make it a bit smoother as we come over to this edge, drop it down a bit, and then have it just fade into the bottom of that arch that we just drew over there. Alright, a couple more petals for this step. Let's add one into the right over here. So I'm going to draw a line that appears from behind here like so, and then this one is quite a big one that's going to flow all the way around here, Sometimes if you know where you want the other end of the petal to end up, it's kind of good to go into the opposite end and draw in what you want the other side to look like. So I'm going to start it from this point here and just create that little flowing line up like so. And I kind of want this edge to be a little bit smoother. This one's not as jagged of a petal. I think we're going to make this one a bit smoother. So round this line back up like so and start to dip it down, but then bring it to a point. Smooth that point back down and then just round it to meet that edge that we started down there. Alright, next we're going to add in another petal at the top here, which is the last step for step 7. So from the back end of this petal is where I want this one to start. So I'm going to arch a line up like so, and I want it to finish here. So I'm going to add that in with a bit of a wavy line that drops up, and I'm kind of going to do this one a bit rounded with a few scallops in it. So I'm going to bring it up from this point, drop it a little bit, wave the pen, bring it to a flat edge, and kind of start to curve that background to meet that point there. Alright, and that's the actual flowers of the actual petals of the flower drawn out now. We can add in some leaves. If there's any areas that you think you want to add in some more petals, feel free to do so at this stage. Because yours will end up looking a bit different to mine, I'm sure, with the different variations in the way you move the pen and things and creating those organic lines. So if you want to add anything in to make it feel a bit more balanced, go for it. Okay, let's add in some leaves. So I'm going to add in one up here, and to create the leaf we really need to wave the pen a lot. So I'll do one up here and curve it round to bring it to a point, and once you get to the end just kind of round that off a bit and flick it towards the point, and then we're going to use the wavy pen again and curve that around like so. And I'm just going to add a quick line in the centre there that I relieve the pressure on as I get towards the end to create a nice tapered flick in the centre of that leaf. And I'm going to draw another one that sits underneath, so I'm going to start it here, wave the pen with a bit of a flatter edge, bring it to a point, and then curve that around with a smoother line to sit behind the back of there. I'm going to balance those out with some more leaves over here, so I'm going to start one from over this side, and I'm going to round the edge of the leaf out like so, curve it towards the end, and then start to create those jagged edges on the side of that leaf to a point, bring it down a bit, and then use those lines again to finish it off to sit behind there. Another quick line from the centre, and I'm going to draw another little one down here, just jagged lines to a point, round it off, and then start to bring it back down, just a little tiny leaf poking through there, and then create that centre line like so. Alright, now we've got the entire layout of the flower done, we can start to go around and add in the start of our shade, and I'm going to keep using the same pen here. And really you want, as a general rule, to add in these quick tapered lines anywhere where the petal dips, but not in all areas, so it'll be a bit overcrowded, so just like choose sparingly where you want to add them in. So here's a good one. As you can see, the petal dips a bit there, so you just want to use a quick flick motion to really extend that and to create more fold in the petals. And make sure these are a variety of lengths, so they're not all the exact same length, and make sure as you do them they follow the curvature of the petal. So as you can see, the ones on the right here have a bit more of a curve following the line of the petal, and as I'm going over this side they curve in the opposite direction, so they're never straight, just to really help accentuate the shape of the flower. So that's a good rule of thumb for any on the outside edges of the petals. So just kind of go around and add those in, and follow where I've put mine as well. But like I say, you don't need to put them in every single area because it is quite a jagged flower in some areas. So if you put it on every dip, it would be too much and it would look too uniform. So we want it to keep it looking organic, keep it looking natural. So we're just going to pick and choose where, and it also helps to add in a bit of interest as well, so don't want to overdo it. I'm going to add some up here, obviously where you've got those longer petals, the bigger gaps, you can add longer lines. Add some here, one down here, and then you can start to add in some as well from the opposite sides of the petals. So kind of a good area for these is where a petal kind of folds in itself, so you've got these gaps in between where these petals come together. That's usually a good area to add them in, where you can naturally assume that there'll be darker areas because not as much light would hit it. So anywhere where there's a petal folding from behind another one is generally a good place to drop those in. We can add some lines from here as well. They're not as obvious of a dip, but they are curved inwards, so they're good points to add them in as well. Add some on this petal down here. Again, always following the curve. And a few shorter ones down here. And these really help create a starting point of where to add the shading next as well. So add some in here where it'll be a bit darker, especially on the inside as well of this bulb. And you'll start to get a sense of when you're feeling like it's balanced overall. If you've got an area that doesn't have so many, make sure to add some in there. Just add a few short ones there. And for the leaves as well, we can start to add in some where these little jagged edges flick down, and these need to be a bit shorter if the leaf is shorter. And again, not on every single one, just pick and choose where you want to add them. Just really angling them towards that centre line we drew, towards where the middle of the leaf will be. And then we can add in some veins coming off that centre vein as well. And just really angle these towards the edge of the flower. And I like to make these a bit more uniform again as well, so not symmetrical on each side. A little bit of a variation on each side is nice. Just add in a couple on this small one down here. And another few on this one down there. Right, so now we've got the starting point of our shading done. I'm going to use my darkest pen, which is a size bigger than the one we were just using, to start to add in the shading in the areas where we know it'll be darkest. So this point, for example, where the inner bulb kind of meets those outside petals, and all you want to do is just some quick lines like the ones we've just drawn, kind of concentrate in those areas, and just extend them out. So just draw a few together next to where you added in those reference points, and then just start to extend them down a bit. So this thicker pen kind of helps achieve that a little bit quicker. Add some down here. And again, you're using quick tapered strokes, following the curvature of the petal. You're adding them to each time. I'm going to add some behind here, so it'll be quite shaded there. And once you kind of get the hang of this technique, your eye will kind of naturally head towards the areas where it knows it'll be a bit darker. Just anywhere where you'd naturally assume there'd be less light. And I'm going to start to add some lines behind some of the petals, just to really start to accentuate the ones that are more towards the centre. They'll be a bit lighter. Add some up here. And you can rotate your paper if it helps as well, to get the right angle that you need these lines to flow in. Add some down here. And any of these bigger petals as well that look a bit bare, good to add some up there just so they're not as blank, so you can kind of be a bit more free with those lines and just really add them in as more of a point of interest rather than anywhere that's easily referenced by the dips in the petals or any natural light. But if you just add like bundles of sections like these, not the whole way along, just leaving white space in between, it kind of creates more of an effect of the petal flowing, being a bit more rippled. Add some in up here and just kind of eyeball where anywhere looks a bit blank at this stage, just to add them in. I'm going to add some here, a few little lines from the top of this part there, and I'm going to start to angle some lines up towards here, like so. Like you can see where we added in those reference points are curved a bit there, so anywhere where you can help to accentuate that and curve it back in the opposite direction helps as well. Add in a little bit here. If you've got any lines as well that you added in as reference that haven't got any shade and areas next to them, especially on the inside, just go around and start to add some in there. Again, a bit of white space over here, so I'm going to add some in there. I've got these blank here as well, so just add some in next to it, and again make sure the lengths of each of these quick lines are all different. You don't want them all to be the same size. So I think that's about it for this pen. For the petals, I'm going to add in some in the very inner corners of where the veins we added to the leaves meet the centre vein, just to really start to add in a bit of definition on those. A little few from the side, not too many. All following the same direction. Make sure you do the same thing for all of the leaves. Have a glance around, and if you're happy with where the general areas of shading have been added, then you're good to move on to the final step. I think I'm happy with that. Yep. I'm just going to add in a couple more lines in the centre there. I feel like I'd just like forever keep looking at it and finding areas, honestly. So I'm just going to put that pen down. And now the last step is to really buff it all out and feather it all, just to really give it that final lovely sketchy effect. And I'm using my finest pen that I have, which is my favourite pen of all time, the 005. You'll probably hear me mention that a lot. And okay, what this is going to do, I'll show you how lovely this works. Okay, so anywhere that we've added these blocks, we're just going to use this pen, and again with quicker motions, just feather it all out. And you can go in and add some finer lines in between, because this pen is so fine and lovely. You just can add in a few more lines, not the whole way around, as again we want to leave white space in between to help the flow of the petal. We can just add in some little points around, so you see the difference in this petal up here that we've just added those quick few lines in compared to the rest. So just repeat that for everything, and the lighter you are with this, the more lovely it'll look. It really is a nice pen for just feathering things out, and just a few quick lines will make things look a lot more detailed than they actually are. So I'm just gonna keep working at these lines and add in a little bit under here, and it really is a balancing act. getting everything just the right amount of shaded, but also leaving enough white space so that it's not, the whole thing isn't covered in ink. White space is important to help balance the shadows. You wouldn't really have shadows if you didn't have the white space. Okay. Just gonna quickly keep adding these in. You can see it's really starting to look complete now. Something quite meditative, is that a word? Relaxing anyway, about this step, because you kind of get lost in just focusing on where to put these lines, and it's quite, you just end up zoning out, and so if I go quiet, that's why. Just got a few lines here, can add in any white spaces like so, that you know will have a bit more light because they're more on the forefront. Just add in a little few lines of this pen just to add a bit of detail. Curve those around. And we don't have too much left to do now. Add in a little few over here. A few at the top there. Oh, we've missed out a little area here. So make sure you're always glancing around. Make sure you've got every petal filled in with a bit of detail. Don't leave any completely blank. It's looking good. And for the leaves, just buff those initial shading areas out. Extend some longer lines in from the outside edge just towards the center. Extend some out from behind where the leaf kind of sits behind the petals. This will be a good bit darker there. Just going to extend that area up. And there we have it. I think, yes. Okay, it's done. Yeah, so that's the rose. 10 steps to draw the rose, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you were able to follow along. If you did, I'd love to see your outcomes. You can share them with me on Instagram at Felicity in Ink and use the hashtag Felicity in Ink Teachers. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, so I know that you enjoyed it, and I'll keep making more here on YouTube. I have other content elsewhere on the internet as well. If you want to learn how to draw in terms of ebooks and things, all the links will be below. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!